Good morning. This morning I will read from Hebrews 11, verse 32 and verse 39, and I'll also read another portion of scripture. Hebrews 11. And what more should I say? For time would fail me to tell of Gideon, Barak, Samson, Jephthah, of David and Samuel, and the prophets. Yet all these, though they were commended for their faith, did not receive what was promised. And I'll read Judges chapter 4, 1 to 16. The Israelite again did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, after Ehud died. So the Lord sold them into the hand of King Jabin of Canaan, who reigned in Hazor. The commander of his army was Sisera, who lived in Harosheth Hagoyim. Then the Israelites cried out to the Lord for help, for he had 900 chariots of iron, and had oppressed the Israelites cruelly 20 years. At that time, Deborah, a prophetess, wife of Lapidoth, was judging Israel. She used to sit under the palm of Deborah between Ramah and Bethel, in the hill country of Ephraim, and the Israelites came up to her for judgment. She sent and summoned Barak, son of Abinoam, from Kadesh in Naphtali, and said to him, The Lord, the God of Israel, commands you, Go, take position at Mount Tabor, bringing 10,000 from the tribe of Naphtali and the tribe of Zebulun. I will draw out Sisera, the general of Jabin's army, to meet you at the Wadi Kishon with his chariots and his troops, and I will give him into your hand. Barak said to her, If you will go with me, I will go, but if you will not go with me, I will not go. And she said, I will surely go with you. Nevertheless, the road on which you are going will not lead to your victory, for the Lord will sell Sisera into the hand of a woman. Then Deborah got up and went with Barak to Kadesh. Barak summoned Jabulun and Naphtali to Kadesh, and 10,000 warriors went up behind him, and Deborah went up with him. Now Heber the Kenite had separated from the other Kenites, that is, the descendants of Hobab, the father-in-law of Moses, and had encamped as far away as Elon Bezen-Naim, which is near Kadesh. When Sisera was told that Barak son of Abinoam had gone to Mount Tabor, Sisera called out all his chariots, 900 chariots of iron, and all the troops who were with him, from Harosheth Hagoyim to the Wadi Kishon. Then Deborah said to Barak, Up, for this is the day on which the Lord has given Sisera into your hand. The Lord is indeed going out before you. So Barak went down from Mount Tabor with 10,000 warriors following him. And the Lord threw Sisera and all his chariots and all his army into a panic before Barak. Sisera got down from his chariot and fled away on foot to Harosheth Hagoyim. All the army of Sisera fell by the sword. No one was left. The word of the Lord. So this morning we'll be talking about Barak. And I'd like you to think of your favorite movie or story, where the plot reaches its height, and as you engage with it, you are on the edge of your chair. Your heart is pounding with excitement. You might even be holding your breath as the hero or heroine of the story defeats their greatest challenge of evil. This is how I feel here in the 11th chapter of Hebrews. The writer, having presented Jesus in the earlier chapters as being superior to mighty angels and even priests of the Old Testament, had started to conclude his or her thesis by calling us to live by faith, as is recorded in the 11th chapter. In this call to live by faith as Christians who believe in Jesus, we are even better placed to live by faith because we're living under a more superior covenant that is founded on even better promises that were presented in the Old Covenant. So listen to the drum roll, ta-da, 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 as we are invited into the climax of the story to unreservedly and completely live by faith in Jesus. So no matter what the challenges and the persecutions that we may face, we are called to live by faith. It now brings us to verse 32 in the chapter, where we are introduced to an army commander in the book of Judges, who we learn more about in the book of Judges. He is believed to have defeated a powerful foreign army and put them to flight. His name is no other than Barak. As verse 32 reads, "What more shall I say? For time would fail to tell of Gideon, Barak, Samson, Jephthah, of David and Samuel and the prophets." The reference of Barak in the same breath as Samson and David might seem, some may say, a little off, because he is to be seen as the most unlikely hero of faith in comparison to David and Samson. After all, he is not the brave Caleb, or he's not the brave Joshua who could be compared to David. It might be that the writer chose him to make a point, which is to show us that, like Barak, we too, no matter how frail and unlikely to be chosen we too can be heroes or heroines of faith. And this is for the next generation, so that they too can emulate us as we are trying to emulate Barak, to stand on their shoulders, for the next generation to emulate and stand on our shoulders, to see God's kingdom come. So, as we think of it, who actually was Barak, and why was he regarded as a hero of faith? Well, his name means lightning, and it only appears in Judges and in Hebrews. So little is known about Barak. But what we do know is that he was the son of Abinoam from Kedesh in Naphtali, which was known to be a famous city of refuge. A city of refuge was allocated to the Levites, and they were priests who served God in the temple. The city provided asylum for those who killed another person so that they would not be persecuted. Kadesh was one of the first cities that Joshua captured for the Israelites. So this is where Barak's family lived. So Barak was not from a noble family, but he was an ordinary person. This goes against the grain, that for us to be mightily used by God, we have to be from an elite family or even from a famous family. The idea that God can choose anyone to do whatever needs to be done is really amazing. So no matter where we are, or even how disqualified we might feel, God is God and can choose anyone to do any of his bidding. So why was Barak famous? Why did he become one of the men in the Hall of Fame? He became famous because he responded to God's request to take an army into battle, which was an answer to the people's prayer. You see, repeatedly the Israelites did what was evil in the sight of God, and again God would punish them and give them into the hand of the wicked king who ruled them harshly. And in this case, that's what happened. They rebelled against God, and God gave them over to this wicked king, King Jabin of Canaan. King Jabin, he had an army of 900 iron chariots, each carrying a charioteer and an archer, so at least 20,000 infantrymen, totaling 21,800 soldiers who were swift in their chariots. And he ruled the Israelites Israelites with cruelty for 20 years. So when the people could no longer bear the harsh rule, they cried out to the Lord for deliverance. And through Deborah, the prophetess, who was the fourth judge of Israel during those times, the Lord heard the people's cry and commanded Barak to position himself at Mount Tabor and lead an army of 10,000 men from the tribes of Naphtali and Zebulun to fight against this mighty king, King Jabin of Canaan. So you may wonder why this battle was so significant. Well, Israel's victory at Mount Tabor marked a milestone in their history because years before, the tribe of Judah lost the battle against the Canaanites who lived on the plains because they had iron chariots. So for them to win this battle, it meant that they could get control of the flat land and not just of the hill country. So winning this battle catapulted Barak to the Hall of Fame. Through God's help, Barak and his army defeated a mighty king and his people. They did this with a small army of only 10,000 soldiers. So isn't God great? God is great. Hence we could sing songs of celebrations such as "How great is our God." As it says, "Sing with me, how great is our God. Let the world know how great is our God." So my friend, no matter what the battle is in life, no matter what battles we may face as we are facing COVID-19 at the moment. Some of us may be facing redundancy. We might be facing lack, physical or mental struggles. Through faith, let us see God going ahead of us and fighting for us. That is why we should preach the gospel of good news that encourages people to stand in faith. So as we continue, let's look at Barak's response to God through Deborah. In verse 8 of Judges 4, we read, "I will go, but if you will not go with me, I will not go." It would seem like Barak was doubting. He had doubt in his mind that the message that came from God probably was not really true, I suppose. That's why he said, "If you don't go with me, I will not go." It's like, well, if I am to die in this battle, I will not die alone. But you too, Deborah, you will die with me. His response was not one of conviction and boldness compared to David's response as he was facing Goliath, where David said, "For who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God?" That is in 1 Samuel 17 verse 26. But rather, Barak's response was like, I'm not sure about this. But even though Barak was not sure, he went. He went into battle even though he was fearful. And at Deborah's word, he assembled the fighting men to march against the tyrant king. It was like he was saying, as Queen Esther said when she too faced the death or the do or die situation. She had said, "If I perish, I perish." So I guess Barak was too saying, "I'm going into battle, and if I perish, I perish." But Barak should have recognized that God said, "I will give them to your hand. I will cause these people to be defeated before you." Another thing that we can learn from this story is that Barak was from the Old Covenant. But we who believe in Christ are from the New Covenant. It means that even though Barak did something of faith, being from the old covenant, which is inferior to the covenant under which we live, the covenant of grace. He is classified as a hero of faith. So what about us? What about us who are Christians under the new covenant? What about us who believe in Jesus? It means that, as it is said in John 14:12-13, very truly, Jesus says, I tell you, the one who believes in me will also do the works that I do, and will do even greater works than these, because I am going to the Father. I will do whatever you ask in my name, so that the Father may be glorified in the Son. An example of what we too can do was expressed in our first gathering since the lockdown. We gathered as a congregation last Sunday. We gathered in the church. And as we were sharing testimonies of our lockdown experiences, one of the ladies, she shared her experience about her colleagues from work. 2 of them were ill, and she determined that by God's grace, they would not die. Nothing would happen to them under her watch, because her God was greater. She believed in the greater power of her God. So she gathered, or probably it was on the phone, she gathered there with her other sisters. They prayed, they declared, they believed God's promise that no one of her colleagues will die. And my sisters and brothers, the good news she shared is that no one died. For us, what is God calling us to do during this time? Of the people who we haven't seen or spoken to in a long time? Could be of our family members, our neighbors who are mourning. You know, God might be putting something on our hearts to do. Let us respond in faith. Even if we are afraid, let us respond. If our response is like David's response, fine. But as long as like Barak, we respond and we take action, God will meet us, and God will give us victory. Victory in whatever God has asked us. So I'd like to encourage you with a line from these songs. When I am afraid, I will trust in him. Even though I can't trace his hand, I will trust his heart. I have a great, big, wonderful God, a great, big, wonderful God, who is always victorious, always watching over us, a great, big, wonderful God. So as I close, I encourage us to listen to the drum roll, the ta-da, tan, tan, ta-da, from those of the Hall of Faith, from those who include Barak, is now as part of the cloud of witnesses, encouraging us and inviting us into the climax of the story of faith. Barak is inviting us to unreservedly and completely live by faith in Jesus, no matter the challenges and the persecutions that we may face. We are called to live lives that are characterized and that are marked by faith. So may God bless this word to our hearts today, so that we too will one day be named in the hall of faith. God bless you.